Let's boot up this keynote.
What you must learn is that these rules are no different than the rules of a computer system. Some of them can be bent. Others can be broken. Understand?
Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, thank you. My name is Michael Carducci, and I am a magician. That means I have made a living for the past 25 plus years, 28, almost 30 years, bending, breaking, and reshaping the rules of reality. And that's why I'm here. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this. I want to share a few stories with you because living at this intersection of magic and technology has been interesting and illuminating. And I want to share with you a few lessons I've learned along the way and a few stories from that journey. And I'm going to start with this. Growing up, for as long as I can remember, I've been passionate about magic. As I would go and work odd jobs and save allowance and any other way I could beg, borrow, and steal some money, it would accumulate until it was time to go to the magic shop. This is a picture of Davenport's in London. That was one of my go-to magic shops growing up. And I would make this journey a couple of times a year to acquire new knowledge, new secrets, new techniques. And one such trip, in 1997, I acquired the secret to levitation. This was one of those moments where I was so excited. Normally I would go home and I would say, okay, I'm going to go home, I'm going to study, I'm going to practice, I'm going to rehearse, and then it's going to be ready for prime time. But this time, I could not wait. I could not do it. I got as far as the underground station. And I stood at the bottom of those escalators, and I took my train ticket, and I caused that train ticket to float in the air. I want you to imagine this for a moment. Just hanging in the air in the exact same way that bricks don't, to paraphrase Douglas Adams. And as I was doing that, as that ticket was just levitating, I stepped back, and the commuters streamed by. I stood there for maybe 20, maybe 30 minutes. They walked past me, they looked through me, they walked right through my ticket. Not a soul noticed. I waited for one person to react, to see this ticket there and say, whoa, and then they would see me doing one of these, and they would be amazed. I just wanted one person to acknowledge what was going on, and it never happened. That day, I learned a lesson. And the lesson is this: we rarely see what we don't expect to see. This is not a new thing. Neuroscientists, there are people in the field of neuroscience that this is their field of study, what they call psychological invisibility. I quoted Douglas Adams a moment ago, author of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Last Chance to See, and of course, probably becoming my favorite, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. And in one of the Hitchhiker's Guide novels, they talked about this phenomenon. They had a ship and they were using this phenomenon as a cloaking device because they realized the most effective cloaking device they could use is to just put the ship there and let people look right through it the way we all do. And he said this, I've got a quote, yes. People's natural predisposition not to see anything they don't want to, weren't expecting to, or can't explain. And none of us are immune. And this is why I love magic. Magic slaps us in the face with the reality that reality is not what it seems, that the possibilities in this universe are more vast than maybe we can admit. And it still has me thinking to this day, how much have we missed? How much have we walked right past? When the magic was happening right in front of us, when the answer was staring us in the face, and we walked right past it. And that's why I'm here this afternoon. I want to help you take those blinders off. You see, this is one of our blind spots, this idea of expectation bias. It will sneak right up on us if we are not careful. If we want to innovate, if we want to solve tomorrow's problems today, we have to be able to see the possibilities that others don't. And we live in a challenging era now. I read about the old scientists where the discoveries were just right out there waiting to be discovered. And so many of those have been found. The software challenges, the human challenges of the next century, of the next couple of years, at this point, the next couple of months. We have to see clearly, free from the filters. And this is why I'm here. Because if we can't see it, like that floating train ticket, it might as well not exist. So how do we take off those blinders? Once again, folks, my name is Michael Carducci, and I'm a magician. Oh, thank you. Sure. Except this is a software conference. What am I doing here? Well, yeah, I'm also a software architect. In fact, I brought to publish this book. In fact, see my friends at the A-Press table. This book is coming out later on this year, Mastering Software Architecture. But this leaves me in a quandary, and it has my entire life. Because which is it? Magician, exclusive, or software architect? What am I? Am I a magician turned software architect, or am I software architect turned magician? Am I a skydiver or a scuba diver? Am I a figure skater or a jazz drummer? Am I an author or a speaker? Am I a magician or a software architect? And that's been holding us back. This idea of siloed knowledge, that it's one or the other. And like so many of these things, it goes back to the beginning for all of us. In fact, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. And it started a decade before I went to that magic shop in the late 1980s. A lucky and an unlucky thing happened to me. I grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere in a state called Wyoming, famous for fluffy cows and nothing. It is a high desert wasteland. This little borough that I grew up in is an oasis of only 8,000 people in that high desert wasteland. We didn't have much. My father was a coal miner. My mother was a school teacher who left the profession of teaching to raise us kids full time, my sister and I. But she wanted the best for us. She wanted us to have access to books. We spent a lot of time at our local library. And every year, we would go to the library discard sale. Not on the first day or the second day or the third day, or in fact, the entire week the discard sale was happening where they were getting rid of the old books to make room for new ones. We would go on the very last day because that's what we could afford. I would get $1. My sister would get $1 because on the last day of the discard sale, whatever was left, they were desperate for somebody to take those books home and love them and read them, because the alternative is these would get shredded and pulped and recycled. And on that fateful day, as I was going through the shelves, perusing, grabbing this, that, and the other, on an afterthought, I saw this book. Magic Digest by George B. Anderson. Now my bag was mostly full. And I thought about it for a nanosecond. And I grabbed that book, threw it in there. That book right there launched a journey. Took me all around the world. Put me on TV, film, radio. That book, that journey has been going on now for decades. And it has led to this moment right here where we are all together. Without that book, I would not be here. As simple as that. I made a career out of what that book started. Over $1 million in lifetime performing fees. So many things from that little moment, that little book, that afterthought that I just threw in my bag. The other thing that happened to me right around the same time was I got a computer. My first personal computer. Not just any computer. An Apple II GS. Do we have any OG Apple II people in the house? I didn't think so. Worth a shot. The Apple II at this point is a footnote in history. And in fact, the fate of the Apple II was already sealed by the time I got this computer. Now, to be fair, it was a very advanced computer for its time. Very advanced. It was more powerful than the comparable Macintosh of that same era. But Steve Jobs had already seen to it that the Apple II was going to be a footnote in history, that the Mac was the future. All right, by applause, how many Mac people do we have in the house? Okay, yeah. That's what happened. Now, it was already obsolete. It was the Mac had come out 4 years earlier. And this, I think it was $3,000 in 1980s money, which is $8,000 today. My meager household, we got this computer. And I think we were making payments on that computer for about a decade. And the salesperson was just happy to get this obsolete doorstop off of their shelf. So we got it, and in the beginning, it was wonderful. I played Oregon Trail. I forded some rivers. It was a good time. But then, the 5.25-inch floppy disk wasn't the most durable media, especially in the sticky hands of a small child. And very quickly, my disks became corrupt. But by that point, the Apple II was obsolete. The software, the hardware had already disappeared from the shelves. And I was devastated because there's no way we were going to get a new computer. I begged my parents. I said, please, can we get a new computer? And they looked at me sternly and said, no. If only I had a Mac. If only I had an IBM PC. If only I had something that wasn't obsolete. I'm lucky. There was nothing else I could do with this thing. So I thought there must be something. I can't believe that a computer would be worthless so quickly. I had a lot to learn. And I start going through the books, the manuals, everything that came with this computer. There had to be something I could do with this. And I found this book, this little thin tome on BASIC. I didn't need software. This book showed me that I could build anything I wanted on this computer. This is where I learned how to program. And then something else happened. It turned out Green River, Wyoming, middle of nowhere, this lingering vestige of the Transcontinental Railroad in the US, just happened to be the pilot site for a program called the National School Network Testbed. Green River, Wyoming was the first school district in the United States to be connected to the internet. The plan was, hey, what if we connected K through 12 schools to this NSFnet thing that is now the internet? And the architect of this project was my next door neighbor. And I acquired a new friend, a mentor. He gave me more books. He helped me learn how to think like a software engineer. And it launched another journey. So, growing up, I was passionate about two things: magic and programming. And it just felt like I had to pick a lane. I was a programming nerd or a magic nerd. I gained deep knowledge in both. And the whole world told me to pick a side. And this is true for all of us. I want you to imagine that this is everything I know. Right? There's a magic side and a software side. Pick a lane, Carducci. Which is it? You can be one or the other. So I fought like hell to keep them separated. And I tried to do both. My magic career, my software career. This is true of all of us, right? This is how we're taught. This is how we're educated in life. We go to school, every subject is taught in isolation. I'm going to teach you math. Math is not science, or math is not art. Art is not physical education. All of these things are separated. And so not only is our knowledge siloed, and in fact, aggressively so, we're taught each subject in isolation. And before long, when we're teenagers, they say, okay, decide. Which of these subjects are you going to specialize in? You're going to specialize in math? You're going to specialize in art? Squander your potential? And my whole life, I struggled with this. Am I a magician or a software architect? Am I a scuba diver or a skydiver? Am I a figure skater or a jazz drummer? Am I a magician or a software engineer? The world tells me I can't be both. You know, in the words, to paraphrase Derek Delgadio, I'm not any of those things. I'm all of those things. This is the reality. This is the secret. Lesson 2. What Richard Hamming calls the essential unity of all knowledge. Because I didn't realize yet, but being a magician made me a better software engineer. Part of it was because I always did the hard stuff. See, for an engineer, we try to engineer right up to the limits of reality, whatever the current reality is. Magicians, we start at impossible. If we don't start at impossible, what's the point, right? It's not a very good magic trick if we didn't just do something impossible. And magic taught me that when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change. Right? Getting that Apple II wasn't unlucky. It gave me a career. It gave me a passion. It brought me onto this stage tonight, today. I don't know. I'm still jet lagged. It's early in the morning right now in Denver, Colorado. Represent 303. The magic, same thing. I looked at problem solving very differently. I learned a whole new set of skills that turned out to be very useful. Every failure in my career wasn't unlucky. It wasn't a failure. It was new information. We metabolize mistakes. R. Buckminster Fuller, fascinating guy, talks about the physical and the metaphysical components of wealth. It's physical, it's matter. At the end of the day, it's matter. Your physical wealth is matter. The wealth that you can weigh, that you can measure, that you can count. And what do we know about matter? Can't create it. We can't destroy it. It can change form, but it is a static quantity. But the metaphysical, the know-how, when you spend it, No matter what happens, you end up with more, whether the project was a success or a failure. And I've had some failures in my career. There are some that still sting to this day, but they made me better. And they made me who I am today. And they gave me the insights to come here and talk about. I was always worried that spending some of my time doing magic, some of my time doing software, that one was robbing the other. That, what if I had, as my teachers would say, what if I had only applied myself to one thing? And I am so glad I didn't. All of these things, every failure, every mistake, every hobby, every interest, every curious pursuit, every side quest, they were all gifts. You have the exact same set of gifts. Now, my journey is not your journey, but your journey is not my journey. And that's why every single person in this room knows something that I don't, and knows something that you don't. We all have that unique set of skills. And as soon as we let go of this idea of specialization, things start to change. I have found joy in my life. I am the happiest I have ever been because I learned to put these pieces together to bring my whole self to everything that I do. What Richard Hamming calls the essential unity of all knowledge. In your future, anything and everything you know may be useful. And something magical happens when we bring our whole selves to whatever it is that we do. Like my entire life, I thought I had to be a specialist. That's what everybody told me. That's specialize. What are you going to do? Are you front end or back end? Are you math or science? Are you science or arts? Specialization is a lie. Specialization is for insects. And I finally took off my blinders. We have to see the possibilities that others don't, but this is powered by your unique perspective that nobody else has. And we all have this, and we become multiplied when we embrace this idea. I can't separate the two. I really can't separate the two. They are hopelessly intertwined. In fact, do you know how I got my first job in tech? Let me tell you this story, because I got my first job in tech. There was a while when I was young, when I was a teenager, I thought, you know what I want to do? I'm going to specialize. I'm going to be a magician. I'm going to be a full-time magician. That's going to be my job. And I got my big break in show business in the late 1990s. I was the house magician at a restaurant called TGI Fridays, because dreams really do come true. And I would show up a couple nights a week and go table to table and do magic. But I was starting to figure out that a career in the performing arts is not for the faint of heart. It was not paying the kind of money to support the lifestyle that I wanted to become accustomed to. And I'll never forget, I had a conversation with my mother one day over dinner, and I said, you know, Mom, maybe it's time I get, how is it you put it, a real job? And she, of course, gets up, gives me a big bear hug, and says, oh, honey, I'm so happy to hear that. I kid. My family has actually been very supportive of what I do, but I like saying that. I think it's funny. Although once my mother was in the audience, and she came to me afterwards horrified. She said, I don't remember ever saying that. I thought we supported it. I'm like, it's a bit, Mom. It's a joke. It's okay. But I'm at TGI Fridays. I'm going to table. And the night before, I had that conversation with my mother. And I said, I think I should get a real job. And she said, oh, honey, I'm so happy to hear that. I said, I want to get a job as a programmer, because I'd been programming this whole time too. Another passion of mine. And she said, well, there's a guy at my church who has a software company. Maybe you should meet him. I can introduce you. So I go online that night. This is the 90s. So I didn't Google him. Google wasn't a thing yet. In fact, I didn't Google him as well. I didn't Alta Vista him either, even though I think I was using Alta Vista, but we hadn't started verbing the nouns yet. It was a different time. It was a simpler time. And I found his company website, Anderson Software. I read about it. They seemed like a gung-ho kind of software development consultancy, a little boutique shop that will build whatever you want for the right price. And then I kept digging. And Scott, maybe you remember this, the 90s. What year did you create your first personal homepage?
It was the early 90s.
It was the early 90s, probably like HTML2, 93, 94, okay. So probably HTML2. And that's what we did, you know, this new World Wide Web thing. We wanted to teach ourselves HTML, so what do? We create a little personal profile page, put some animated GIFs on there, a little under construction GIF like this, some flaming horizontal rules because, yeah, you know, the badges and the banners and things like that, the blue ribbon campaign, yeah, oh, the blink tag. Let's not forget the blink tag. Shortly after that, we got the scrolling marquee tag, if you remember that. The web of the 90s was a different time. But I found his personal homepage where he wrote about himself and his family, his wife, his kids. Guy loved his family. He had a big family. And I read all about them. Now, as fate would have it, that very Sunday, I'm at TGI Fridays going table to table. And I walk up to a table, introduce myself. And the man stands up very politely, shakes my hand, and says, well, good afternoon, Michael. My name is Martin. This is my wife, Grace, my daughter, Hannah, my daughter, Vanessa, my son, Michael, and my son, Jason. Right? That was the guy. He's in my restaurant right now. Not even 12 hours after I was reading his entire life story. Two ways to handle this. I handled it like a magician. I didn't say a word. I walk up to the guy, do a little card trick, and the whole family's like, whoa, Martin, huh. He's studying it. He's analyzing it, dissecting it. And I looked at him, I said, typical right brain reaction right there. Guy like you probably studied, I don't know, natural sciences somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge. For a moment, he was stunned. Rando magician at TGI Fridays just read him like a book. But just for a moment, then the engineer kicked in. He starts probing for boundaries. He starts writing test cases. He says, yeah? What did I study? Checkmate, magic man. I looked at him and I did one of these, you know, I sized him up and I said, guy like you, something on the pure end of the spectrum. Not geology, no, not botany. Botany to you is just applied biology. And in fact, biology to you is just applied chemistry. In fact, chemistry to you is just applied physics. Yes, you have a master's in physics from the University of Oxford. And his wife, she just loses it. She says, Michael, you're very perceptive. I said, Grace, your accent. There was no stopping me now. She said, yes. I said, you're from the Philippines. Yes, but specifically, you're not from Davao City, are you? She's like, no. But you're from the Davao region. Maybe Capitabo or whatever the place was. I can't remember now. And she's stunned. And I did not leave that table until I had dished out every single fact I knew about that family. I was there for 45 minutes. There was no stopping me. And you think I was a little on the nose with the Philippines thing. It just got worse. And at the end of all of it, I said, by the way, I also happen to be a key and amateur programmer. If you were ever considering hiring a junior developer or an intern, I'd be delighted to be considered. The man stood up, looked me square in the eye, shook my hand and said, if you're half as good at that as you are at this, you are hired. Software engineer. I can't separate the two. And, you know, yeah, maybe I tricked him into getting this job. I don't know. But you got to imagine what it was like for him, this rando magician. You go to a restaurant, this guy's just telling you your life story, telling your deepest. You know what? I want to do this. Shall we play a game? I want everybody in this room, for a moment, think of something, not just something I don't know, think of something you don't want me to know. Just take a moment, think. If the first thing that pops in your head is fine. Safe and secure, locked up in the steel trap. Now, this is an interesting room. So many guilty pleasures and secret shames. So many engineers who aren't thinking of a secret. They're just thinking of some random little fact or whatever popped in their mind, thinking, I bet he can't guess this. Scott Davis. Come on down. Give him a round of applause. Miss Kate, would you hand him that microphone? Scott Davis, come on down. Oh, yes. There's a speaker. Now, I'm going to guess at some point today you thought of a secret, maybe like a PIN code, something like that you don't want me to know, and now
Yes.
you're thinking he might be revealing this on stage, so you've changed. You have a new thing in your head, don't you?
Okay.
Yes? You have something in your head? Something that I couldn't possibly know.
Yes.
Now, it's not a PIN code, but I like you. I gotta wonder, is it still a number?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And it's not a secret.
No.
So I can reveal this. Okay. All right,
Yes.
look at me. Poker face, poker face. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Now, even though this is not a secret, it's not a PIN code anymore.
No.
It's something you feel a deep connection to.
Yes.
This is connected. A number
Mm-hmm.
that you feel a deep, personal, passionate connection to.
Yes.
Interesting. And it's not pi, it's not e, it's not tau,
No,
it's not a mathematical constant. I got a hit on the digit 1. Is there a 1 in your number?
Yes.
Okay. There's more than 1 though. There's another 1 in there somewhere, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
You know what? So something you're passionate about, because I got to watch your session, partially from backstage, partially from front stage. You're passionate about accessibility,
Yes.
about making the web a better place, making the world a better place. I think there's a connection there. Is that correct?
Sure. Okay. Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. You have a wonderful family too.
Yes.
And I think there's a connection as well to your wonderful family.
Okay.
Is that a fair statement?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Does the word idea mean anything to you?
Idea. Yeah, in the general, yes.
Okay. Because I think this relates to the idea as an acronym. If I may, I may be about to dive off without a safety net. IDEA, I believe, is an acronym
Okay.
for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
Yes.
And within the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, there's a section,
Mm-hmm.
section 1416.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Technological assistance and governance and support.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's
Is that the
correct.
connection?
That's the connection.
Give him a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
And you did not tell me that. You did not tell me any of this, did you?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm impressed.
Give him one more round of applause, everybody. But here's the thing. These little random side quests, these tangents, all of these things, they are linchpins to problems that we have to solve in the future. And as Steve Jobs said in his commencement speech at Stanford, we can never connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect the dots looking backwards. And it is the sum of our knowledge, our experiences, our passions, our curiosity. It is all of these things, the successes and failures, that make us greater than the sum of our parts. I talked about R. Buckminster Fuller. He says, synergy is the only word in our language that means behavior of the whole system unpredicated by the separately observed behaviors of the system's separate parts or any subassembly of these parts. There's nothing in the chemistry of a toenail that predicts the existence of a human being. And this is what I want you to remember. Everything you learn, everything you pursue, everything you do has value. if you are open to connecting it to what you do. Now, Bucky understood this. And another one of my favorite quotes of his is this. He says, yeah, go, clear, enter. He says, I'm not a genius. I'm just a tremendous bundle of experiences. Specialization is a lie. Specialization is a limiter. Yes, we need specials. We need some amount of specialization. But we also need what David Epstein in his book Range refers to as range. That we need to be able to connect things in ways that other people haven't, especially in this moment right now, with the world the way it is, with technology the way it is, to be able to connect these things. Range is where the magic happens. Synergy is where the magic happens. Like, we need that special. I needed enough specialization in programming to get that job, but everything that happened after that was a result of everything else I brought to the table. For my coding gig, for my software gig that with Martin, and by the way, I know you're filming this. I realize now that Martin and his family, they're still dear friends of mine. I never told him that story. Like, in the beginning, it was fine, you know, because I'm not going to tell him that right away. He's still impressed with me. And then enough time passes, it would just kind of be awkward to bring it up. And I don't know, he'll find out eventually because, you know, maybe he watches these things from time to time. But I needed enough specialization to get in the door. But ultimately, that's just our ante. Gets us into the game, but all it does is get us into the game. Everything that happens beyond that point depends on everything else we bring to the table. And you are at an event like this, and without a doubt, you look at the agenda and you see things that are directly and immediately useful. Please go to at least one session this week that is on a topic that seems irrelevant. You don't know when that's going to be that seed. I had a really enlightening conversation with Venkat Subramaniam some number of years ago, and you taught me this. We don't learn in these big discrete jumps. I had my little quote from The Matrix on there. It's not like The Matrix, you know, they just plug us in and be like, all right, give me Scala stat. I have functional foo, right? We learn these little tiny deltas. And to quote you, sir, everything we learn creates a little foundation for the next thing we learn. It creates fertile soil, and it is cumulative, and it is exponential. Do something that sounds interesting, but maybe not directly useful. Follow your curiosity, and be open to possibilities to put those things together. This is why I love magic, because magic slaps us in the face with the reality that we can very easily miss what happens right before our eyes. Magic abuses and exploits our assumptions before it destroys them. And then for a brief moment, when all of those shredded pieces of newspaper magically knit together, for that brief moment, we get to experience the rarest emotion of all, astonishment. Astonishment is the rarest emotion. You could probably tell me, I can tell you, last time I felt frustrated or angry or despair or happy or sad or any of these things. All of them today, by the way, just fun fact. When is the last time you felt astonishment? You know, before the newspaper magically welded together. Astonishment is a beautiful emotion. Einstein had a quote on this. He said, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It's a source of all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. Astonishment. Now, yeah, here we go. Clear that out. When was the last time I felt astonishment? Nobody told me this. When I was reading that magic book, when I was studying all this, when I was learning all these magic tricks, nobody told me I was making a Faustian bargain. Because being a magician means at will, I can give you the feeling of astonishment. But I can't have it anymore. I know too much. You show me a magic trick, even one that I don't know. I have enough of a foundation of knowledge that a hypothesis will beat astonishment to the finish line every single time. And it's it was something I had to learn to deal with because I can't see what you see. When I think about magic and when I felt astonishment, it might have been one of those trips to the magic shop. Like, I'll never forget this. I walked in there one day with my savings and accumulated cash. I said, "What do you have for me today?" And the man reaches behind the counter, pulls out a silk handkerchief, and he says, "I have this for you." He takes that handkerchief, and he sticks it in his hand. Just like this, right? Nothing fancy, no sleeves, no moves, and it's gone. Just like that. Oh, thank you. And, I'm looking, I'm checking the guy, cannot find it. It's just gone. I had no explanation. I had to have it, and I bought it, and now it doesn't fool me. And I wasn't interested in it anymore. I started thinking like a magician. And thinking like a magician is dangerous because I want to be the best magician. I want to be the best software architect. And as impressed as I was with that trick the first time I saw it, I did it for a short while and I never did it again. I wanted a better method. There had to be a better method. And when we look at things like how to tear a newspaper apart and restore it, there's a whole lot of different methods out there on how to do that. And if you go online, and some of you, I already know this, some of you are going to be Googling, if you're not doing it already, you're going to be Googling this, how to tear up a newspaper and restore it. And you'll find a bunch of methods. You might find the one that I'm doing, I don't know. But you'll also find forums of magicians talking about, what's the best one? I want to do a newspaper tear, what's the best one? And then somebody will say, oh, it's this guy's, hands down. And somebody else will say, no, it's that guy's, way better. And somebody else will say, no, it's the other one. And we want the best one. But best is subjective. This is relevant to all of us because we do our own kind of magic. And we want to do the best. There's always more to these things than meet the eye. So what do I look for? Yeah, what makes a magic trick good? What makes it the best? Well, like everything, what makes software good? It's the same question. What makes software good? Like anything, it depends. So when you look at the different methods for a magic trick, I'm really looking for the illities, if you will, of that magic trick. Because there's a set of illities that is different for me than for somebody else. Different for what I'm doing in this keynote than somebody who's on a cruise ship right now doing a magic show. Right? Beyond the effect. Right? I'm thinking about angles. I'm thinking about resetability. Can I do it and then do it again right away? How difficult is it to learn? How reliable is it? Is it going to fail on me when I'm on a stage? That would be embarrassing. Can everything be inspected? Can somebody go and dissect this newspaper? Yes. Can I take it with me? Can I pack it on a plane? Can I pack it in my carry-on luggage? How much is it? Is it going to fit my show? Is it going to fit my personality? Is it going to fit the audience? Is it going to fit the environment? Is it going to fit all of these things? And which of these is most important? And virtually every magic trick was created to optimize one of these trade-offs. Hey, I want to do that trick, but I want to be able to do it with people standing all around me, people behind me, over my shoulder. Okay, cool. We'll make that work, but it's going to hurt some of these other things. Or I want to be able to do this and immediately hand it out for inspection. Okay. I want somebody to sign the card. Okay, well, that's going to change everything again. These are all different. There's no objective best answer when it comes to trade-offs. And it's the same in software. And again, magic, software architect, there are more parallels than we might think. Trade-offs matter. Oh yeah, preparation is a whole lot of these. Trade-offs matter in context. So in magic and engineering, we want to give our best. We're looking for objective right answers, but they don't exist. And the thing is, the deeper we go, we run into these issues again and again, thinking like a magician, thinking about it like a software engineer. And that's the thing. We all deal in our own kind of magic. We know the inner workings of the software. Somebody might have an app, to them looks like magic. You're like, oh yeah, that's just Ionic and Firebase, right? You speak a whole different language. But we know the inner workings. We see the man behind the curtain. And we've been doing this, a lot of us, so long, we can't see what the users see. And we find it very difficult to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of those users. That's why Venkat said this morning in the keynote, the people who build the best software actually use it. They are the customers, because it's easy to empathize with ourselves. It's hard to empathize with other people. But the thing is, familiarity breeds contempt for magicians, for software architects, for all of us. And we're guilty of optimizing what we want and what matters to us over what matters to the people we're actually building shows or software for. We lose perspective. Don't let what we learn blind us to what matters. Being able to take a step back, being able to empty our cup. Because as a magician, I have to remember the immortal words of the professor, Di Vernon. When somebody would talk about a magic trick and they talk about how clever the method is, he said, I don't care about the method. I don't care how it's done. The effect is everything. And when I'm creating software, I have to remember, it doesn't matter about optimizations and, and ON squared complexity and all of these things. Software serves humans. Now, if these things affect the humans using the software, it becomes relevant. But if it doesn't, then it's just for our own self-gratification. Familiarity breeds contempt. So why don't I perform that vanishing silk anymore? Like seriously, the vanishing silk, I trotted that out today for this. I haven't done it probably in years, unless I was teaching it to somebody else. There's 3 reasons. Number 1, ego. Right? I feel like as a magician, the better I get, the harder what I do has to be. Because hard problems need hard solutions. Complex problems need complex solutions, right? And I've learned so much more since I learned that little trick. And then there's part of me as well, I'm afraid that you already know how that works. And you're like, oh, I think I know what happened with the little and the, it's okay. But I feel like my value as a magician exists only if I fool you. And there's a third one too. And I'm going to get to that. I want to tell the story of this book. I want to tell you the rest of the story of this book. Because it's a great story. Got it at a library discard sale. Read it, made a career out of it, made 2 careers out of it. I got hired to do magic at a tech conference 15 plus years ago. And they said, hey, we're looking for a show to entertain our conference. Bunch of software engineers. Be careful, they're very analytical. Do you think you can hang with a crowd like that? And I said, I think so. The guy didn't know this is like my day job as a software engineer. So I go in there, I do a show. And before I know it, I'm going to all these conferences doing magic. I was the resident magician on the No Fluff, Just Stuff software conference tour. And I would go in there, I'd do a show, and I'd pepper it with in-jokes that only developers would get. They loved it. Wow, this guy really did his homework. He's making jokes about cucumber tests? That's a deep cut. Yeah. And then they asked, once they finally figured out I actually can code and do some of these things, you ever thought about speaking? No. Maybe think about it. And here I am, on the other side of the planet with you, and I'm so happy to be here. Oh, thank you. But that's not the real story. That's the fun story. The real story is I got this book, I flicked through it, I looked at some of the illustrations, I took a stab at one of the tricks, I failed. I wasn't immediately amazing at it, and I put it on a shelf. And then one day, my sister, we were sitting one summer, endless summer day that exists only when you're children. She shows me a card trick. And I was blown away. I said, how did you do that? She said, it's in your book, dummy. And then I went back and read it. And it's another trick. It's a great trick, and I don't ever do it. And I don't know any magicians who would. Right? They would laugh at me if I did that trick. They would look down their nose at me if I did that trick today. And that's one of the things that comes out of this, is we have this idea that this is what I learned today, but everything that came after it must be better. We call this novelty bias. How do you fool a magician? If you actually want to fool a magician, you tell them the method is new. Not like any of the other methods out there. My goodness, the amount of money I have spent on a new method for an old trick, only to find out that the only value, the only utility of the new method was the fact that it was new. And we're seeing the same thing in tech. Novelty bias. And we're spending so much time just trying to keep up. It's so easy to come up with something, give it a new name nobody's heard of anymore, and it's a new thing. And we are just reinventing the same ideas over and over and over again. Not universally, but we're doing this a lot. And we have this idea that the old ideas, this notion that the old ideas have no value because they're old and we must have learned so much more. Like the pace of technology is changing so fast. I don't perform those two tricks that fooled me. The one my sister did, the one I did at the shop. Not only ego, not only too simple, but this idea that newer is better. Except, don't underestimate the value of what is established, old, and good. And there is a whole lot more in our field than we give credit to. We got to balance our learning between keeping up with what is new and understanding the ideas that everything is built on. Otherwise, we end up over-engineering, we end up with accidental complexity, and it just snowballs from there. I saw this guy, he was talking about the web and how we've fallen so far with the ideas of CSS. He says, it's not new, it's only good. And in this backwards, nonsense optimized economy of garbage and nonsense, good just isn't bad enough. Now, before I leave you, I want to show you one more thing. One more piece of magic. And I need somebody to help me out. And you're right here. Would you mind helping me out? Come on down. Give her a round of applause. I have small cards, but for this room, I brought a big card. Come right over here. I brought a big deck of cards. Two reasons. One, so everybody can see what we have. And two, I think it keeps me honest, right? I mean, shuffling these cards is certainly a challenge. In fact, I challenge anybody to palm one of these suckers. I'm going to set these down. Maybe I'll give them one more little mix. You're up here. You got to keep me honest. Does that seem like a pretty fair mix?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Your job is simple. You're going to split the cards into two piles, wherever you want. About there? Yeah, just perfect. You're happy there. You don't want to do it again?
No.
Okay. We'll set that off to the side for a moment. In the world, in any given moment, fortunes are won and lost on the turn of a card. In every casino, before the cards are dealt, the player is given the opportunity to cut. And where you make that cut can be the difference between a fortune, winning a fortune, and losing a fortune. Now, you cut to a card, and you're happy with your cut. Please, if you would, take that card you cut to, look at it, don't let me see it, show it to them. Now, just like I was able to intuit, Section 1416, Individuals with Disability and Education Act. Come on, that's. I'm going to tell you that of all the cards it could be, there are red cards and black cards. I think it's a black card. There are two suits. There are clubs, clovers, and spades. I think it's a club. I think it's a number card. I think it's the 6 of clubs. Oh, thank you. Yes. Now, you're going to be thinking about this in a little bit, and you're going to say, well, maybe he caught a glimpse. Maybe there's a camera. Maybe there's somebody in the room right now who's giving me little smoke signals from the back of the room telling me what it is. And that is why I prepared a prediction in my slide deck. Whoa. Although I know you're engineers, you're going to be dissecting this. You're going to be thinking about this tonight. You're like, wait a minute, that's PowerPoint. PowerPoint has a VBA interpreter in there. It's still there. It still works. And maybe somehow he's wired this up into OpenAI, and it's listening to us, and it's transcribing everything, and it made a call out to Dolly, and Dolly sent and streamed the image back down to my PowerPoint in real time, because that's the kind of thing that I could do. And that's how it works. You know, a simple magic trick that relies on $500 million of compute. And that's why I went low tech. And in my pocket, I have a prediction. Now, that is not just a prediction. That is a laminated prediction. Is that the correct prediction? Laminated. Come on. Although, you're going to be thinking about this. You're going to be like, wait a minute. Maybe he's got 52 laminated predictions in 52 different pockets. And that is why, under a whole bunch of the seats in this auditorium, if you reach down underneath, there's a piece of metal. There are cards under your chairs, a lot of them in this room. Reach down, take a look, feel around. There are cards. I have filled this auditorium with sixes of clubs. It's going to be under the yes, 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 yes. You can keep those. Except I went too far, didn't I? You're starting to put I can already see you're starting to put the pieces together. Yeah. I over-engineered. Yeah, exactly. She's right. She's right. That is not an ordinary deck of cards. And in fact, the six of clubs was the only card that you could have picked. Was this this was your six of clubs, right? Look what had happened. Yes. Yes. Show them. The six of clubs is the only card she could have picked because every other card in that deck, pick up the other half, look at those, because every other card in that deck is blank. Oh, I had these custom made. I got a kick out of this. When I sent the order off, I got a panicked email from the printers. They said, sir, there's only one face on these cards. Did you make a mistake? We don't want to run the printing job until you confirm that you only want one card in your deck. Yes, I only want one card in my deck. Lesson 6, beware over-engineering. But we've only got 2 minutes left, and I want to close with this. Thank you so much. Give her one more round of applause. Being a software architect, I see all this cool stuff. This is the most scalable architecture. Cool. This is the highest throughput. This is the fastest language there is. That's thinking like a magician, thinking like a software engineer. See, I've gotten to this point now where maybe in the beginning the simple stuff is all you can do. And it took me 40 years of my life to get to a point where doing the simple things sometimes is all you need to do. Do you remember that trick that I told you about? My sister showed me when I was a child that I would never do, that no magician would ever take seriously? You just saw it. And so we're full circle. This book that took me all over the world to this moment right here with you, that had me on cruise ships and on stages and all these different venues, all these different things. I even got hired to do magic for an orgy. Now, they sent me on my way before the main event, but like these are things that I performed at funerals. Like people will hire magicians for anything. Landed my job in tech. All these things. And it's not because of anything that I did. I failed. I gave up too easily. It's my sister Sarah. Yeah, Sarah deserves some applause. And the crazy thing is, she showed me that, I told her that story, and she didn't even remember. So I'm going to leave you with this. Don't underestimate the small things. Complex problems can have simple solutions. Tiny actions can have big consequences. Things that we don't even remember. But just remember this. As you're pondering possibilities or looking for answers, there's magic everywhere in every moment. We just need to open our eyes and be ready to see it. And with that, I want to say thank you so much.